The woman in blue's sun had not yet risen over Los Angeles. The streets were still half asleep, painted in a soft, bluish glow from the streetlights that hadn't turned off yet. Most of the city was just beginning to stretch its arms, still, tucked in dreams. A few cars whispered past on the quiet road, their engines humming like lullabies. The early morning air was cool and quiet. Not cold, not warm, just still. Keanu Reeves sat in the back of a black SUV, his driver silently maneuvering through the back roads to avoid attention. They were heading to a quiet film set in Studio City, tucked away from the usual chaos of Hollywood. The studio had requested an early shoot, hoping to avoid the paparazzi and give the cast some peace. Keanu didn't mind early mornings. In fact, he liked them. Fewer people, fewer eyes, more silence. But just as they neared a lonely bus stop on the corner of Glendale Boulevard and Lexington Avenue, Keanu leaned forward slightly. "Stop the car," he said gently but firmly. His driver glanced at him in the mirror, confused, but obeyed. Keanu's single quotes' eyes were locked on someone. Sitting on the worn bench beneath the flickering bus shelter light was a woman, slumped forward, dressed in faded blue hospital scrubs. Her long black hair was tied loosely, with strands falling messily over her face. Her shoes were white, but stained. Her hands were folded in her lap, head resting on her chest as if she had been too tired to stay upright. Beside her sat a cheap canvas tote, half open, with a small snack bar sticking out. She looked young, maybe late 20s. Her name tag had fallen to the ground. Keanu stared for a moment, his mind trying to wrap around the image. "Sir," the driver asked, "is everything okay?" Keanu opened the car door without answering and stepped out onto the sidewalk. The morning chill hit his face, but he barely noticed. He walked quietly toward the woman, careful not to startle her. He stood there for a few seconds, just watching. She was fast asleep, but not peacefully. Her body twitched now and then, as if her dreams were not kind. Her shoulders were tense, her fingers curled as though gripping something invisible. Her breathing was soft, but shallow. Keanu gently crouched and picked up the name tag that had fallen. It read, "Nurse Liana Rivera, Community General Hospital." His heart tugged. This wasn't just someone resting after a walk. This woman had likely come off a night shift, and judging by the sweat stains and the way her shoes looked like they'd run a marathon, it wasn't an easy one. He hesitated, then softly called out, "Miss." She didn't move. He said again, "Miss, are you okay?" She stirred slightly, then jerked up with a start, her eyes wild for a second. She looked at him with confusion, then embarrassment as she realized she had fallen asleep in public. "I am sorry," she said, rubbing her eyes. "I missed the bus. I guess I must have dozed off." Keanu smiled gently. "It's okay. I didn't mean to scare you. Just wanted to make sure you were all right." She blinked, still groggy, then, noticing his face more clearly, her eyes widened. She covered her mouth quickly, then chuckled softly. You look just like Keanu Reeves," he said, laughing a little. "Yeah," she breathed. "But you can't be. I must still be dreaming." He held up both hands. "No dreams, just real life. And you're wide awake now." She looked down quickly, clearly embarrassed, brushing down her scrubs and adjusting her bag. "I'm sorry, this is so weird. I didn't mean to make a scene or anything. I just needed to rest a minute before walking home." "You walk here?" She nodded. "It's about 6 miles, but the hospital didn't have shuttle passes this week. Budget cuts, and I couldn't afford Uber. The bus was late, so I waited. Guess I fell asleep." Keanu felt a strange kind of ache in his chest. He wanted to ask more, but he knew better than to push. Instead, he offered gently, "Can I give you a ride?" She shook her head quickly. "No, thank you. I appreciate it, really, but it's okay. I've walked it before. You just did a night shift. You're exhausted. I don't mind." She hesitated. Her pride was loud, louder than her fatigue, louder than the kindness in his voice. But her body was tired, so very tired. "Just this once," she said, almost whispering. Keanu opened the door for her and helped her into the SUV. His driver looked surprised, but said nothing. As they drove, the city began to wake around them. Coffee shops flicked on lights, delivery trucks rolled by, birds sang. But inside the car, there was silence, broken only by Liana's soft sighs as she leaned back into the seat. Keanu watched her, quietly. Finally, she said, "I hope this doesn't seem ungrateful. I'm just not used to help. You don't have to explain anything," he said. "You help people every day. Someone should help you too." She gave him a small, tired smile. And for a moment, Keanu felt something shift inside him. This woman wasn't just a nurse. She was something else, something deeper. A quiet fighter in a world that rarely noticed. And he had a feeling her story was only just beginning. The missing Ford SUV moved gently through the quiet streets, the soft hum of the engine barely louder than the silence inside. Keanu Reeves sat with his hands resting on his lap, glancing at the woman beside him from time to time. Nurse Liana Rivera leaned against the door. Her eyes half closed. She looked calm now. But under the surface, there was something heavy, something unspoken. They hadn't spoken much since she got in. Maybe a few words here and there. Keanu didn't mind. He understood silence. Sometimes it said more than words ever could. But something about Liana pulled at him, not in a romantic way. Something deeper. It was her posture, the way she kept glancing at her phone with a look that wasn't checking for messages, but making sure something wasn't missing. The way she nervously tapped her fingers on her thigh. She was carrying something inside her, a storm she was trying to keep from spilling out. "How long have you been a nurse?" Keanu finally asked, hoping to make her feel comfortable. She looked over at him and gave a small smile. "Almost 4 years now. I started just before the pandemic. Was still in training when everything hit. That must have been hard." She nodded slowly. "It was. But also, it taught me things no textbook ever could." Keanu leaned slightly closer. "Like what?" She thought for a moment, then said, "How strong people are, and how fragile. How a stranger can cry in your arms 1 minute and thank you with their last breath the next. It's beautiful and heartbreaking. Sometimes I go home and I can't stop crying. But other times, I feel like maybe I did something that mattered." Keanu didn't respond for a moment. Her words settled deep in his chest. He had played heroes on screen, saved cities, defeated villains, but what she just said, it made him feel like his roles were shadows compared to the real light she carried. As they turned onto a quiet residential street, Liana sat up straighter. "This is it," she said, pointing to a small building on the corner. "Thank you again for everything." Keanu looked at the apartment. It was old. The paint was chipping, and the steps had cracks in them. A woman walked out holding a crying baby, while a man on the second floor argued with someone on the phone. It wasn't dangerous, but it wasn't quiet either. It looked like the kind of place where people lived paycheck to paycheck and learned to make do. "Do you live alone?" he asked without thinking. She hesitated. "Yes, well, kind of. It's just me and someone important." He raised an eyebrow, but she quickly added, "Thanks again. I'll be fine from here." Before he could say more, she stepped out, waved, and walked briskly toward the building. Keanu watched her until she disappeared inside. He sat back, arms crossed, eyes staring at the cracked pavement. Something about her words, someone important, echoed in his mind. The car didn't move. Instead, Keanu told the driver, "Wait here a few minutes." Inside the apartment, Liana climbed the stairs to the second floor. Her legs ached, every muscle screamed. She unlocked her door and stepped inside the dimly lit room. It was tiny, 1 bedroom, a small kitchen, no real living room. A mattress sat on the floor beside a plastic crate filled with children's books. In the corner, there was a wheelchair. And in that chair was a little boy, maybe 6 years old, with big brown eyes and a soft smile that lit up the entire room the moment he saw her. "Mama," he said, reaching his arms up. Liana rushed over, kneeling down to hug him tightly. "Hey, baby, Mama's home." He rested his head on her shoulder. I missed you more." They stayed like that for a while. Outside, Keanu waited. He wasn't sure why. Something told him to. After 10 minutes, he stepped out of the car and walked quietly up the steps to the building. He wasn't trying to intrude. He just needed peace, maybe to say thank you, maybe to offer more help. But as he reached her door, he stopped. It was slightly open, and he heard her voice, soft and soothing. "We'll go to the park tomorrow, I promise. Mama just needs to find a way to fix your chair. The brakes are getting worse, and I don't want you to fall again." The boy said something back, but it was too quiet. Then Leanna's voice, lower now, filled with emotion. "I know, sweetie. I wish Daddy was still here too. But it's just us now, and I'm going to keep trying, okay? I won't let go, not ever." Keanu stepped back. He had heard enough. He returned to the SUV, eyes distant. As they pulled away, his thoughts were loud. This woman had been sleeping at a bus stop after a night shift, to walk 6 miles to a broken apartment. Where her son, paralyzed, waited for her every day, and still she smiled, still she comforted others. He opened his phone and pulled up an old contact, someone from a foundation he had quietly supported for years. "Hey," he said, "I need you to find out everything you can about Nurse Liana Rivera. She works at Community General. She's raising a son alone. I want to know what she's struggling with, how much she earns, if the hospital's treating her right. But do it quietly. No one can know." The voice on the other end nodded, understanding. Keanu ended the call. He looked out the window as the sun finally rose above the horizon. But in his heart, it felt like something much bigger had just begun. The broken wheels. That afternoon, Keanu Reeves sat in his quiet home, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows that let in the golden light of Los Angeles. The house was peaceful, not just quiet but peaceful, like a temple built for rest. Yet today, that peace felt wrong, like wearing silk when someone else walked barefoot on glass. He had been thinking about her non-stop. Liana, the nurse, her tired eyes, her soft voice. The boy in the wheelchair with a smile bigger than the room. Keanu had seen pain before, on screen, in friends, in fans. But this was different. This was a kind of quiet, invisible pain. The kind most people walk right past. His phone buzzed. It was a message from the contact he had called earlier. It was short, professional, but enough to make Keanu lean forward. "Got everything? It's worse than you thought. Can we talk?" Keanu replied, "Yes, now." A few minutes later, a video call opened. The man on screen wore glasses and looked concerned. "Her name is Liana Rivera," he began. 29 years old, born in Bakersfield, moved to law for nursing school, single mother. Her husband died 2 years ago in a car accident caused by a drunk driver. They had no insurance. Since then, she's been raising her son alone. His name is Lucas. He was born with spina bifida, partially paralyzed from the waist down. Keanu's jaw tightened. She works full-time at Community General Hospital. The man continued. "Night shifts mostly. The hospital lost funding during the pandemic and cut back staff. She picks up double shifts often. Salary is low. She barely makes rent. The wheelchair she uses for Lucas, it's 5 years old. The brakes are broken. It's not safe. She's been trying to save for a new one. But she can't." Keanu finished softly. "No," the man said, "and there's more. Last year, she applied for assistance to get her son into a special program for therapy. It was denied because she was $20 over the income limit." Keanu stood up and walked to the window, running a hand through his hair. $20, he whispered. "She was denied because of $20. The man nodded. Keanu turned back, eyes burning. "I want to help her," he said, "but not just by throwing money at her. I want it to matter. I want it to be quiet, real, not some flashy donation. No cameras, no press. Can you help me do that?" "Of course," the man replied. "I already have some ideas." Keanu ended the call. He sat back down, but he couldn't stay still. His heart was heavy yet alive. Something inside him was awake. Not anger, not pity. Something deeper, like a call he couldn't ignore. The next evening, Liana returned from work again. Her legs ached. Her back throbbed. But Lucas smiled as soon as he saw her. That smile erased the pain. "Mama," he said. "Guess what?" "What, baby?" "Miss Tanya from school gave me her old crayons. Look." He held up a tiny paper with scribbles on it, blues and reds, and a stick figure. That looked like a superhero. "Who's that?" she asked, kneeling beside him. "That's you." He grinned. "You save people." Her eyes welled up. She kissed his forehead. "And you save me, every single day." He pointed to the paper again. "But see that? That's your cape." She smiled. "Where's yours?" "I don't have one." He shrugged. "We'll fix that," she whispered. The next morning, Keanu was back near the hospital. He stood outside the main entrance, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses. It wasn't for disguise. He just didn't want attention. He waited. Soon, Liana walked out, clearly just ending another shift. She looked even more exhausted than before, a coffee cup in one hand, her tote in the other. Her steps slowed. Keanu waved gently. She looked up, startled, then smiled. "You again, me again. How did you know where I work? Lucky." "Guess," he said, avoiding the real answer. She laughed. "You must be really good at guessing." "Some days." What are you doing here?" He took a breath. "Can we talk?" She hesitated, then nodded. They sat at a nearby bench under a tree. It was quiet. The sun was just beginning to rise behind the hospital roof. "I've been thinking about you," Keanu began. "About your story. About Lucas." Her eyes widened. "How do you—" "I saw his wheelchair," he said gently, "and I heard you talk to him. Don't worry. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I couldn't stop thinking about you too." She looked down, her hands gripping her cup tightly. "I don't want pity," she said quietly. "This isn't pity," he replied. "This is respect." She looked up. "You wake up every day," he continued, "and do something most people can't. You carry the world on your back, and you still find a way to smile for your son. That's not weakness. That's strength." She said nothing. Her lip trembled. "So I want to help," he said. She shook her head. "You've already done more than enough." "Then let me do something for Lucas," he said. "I know someone who can get him a new wheelchair. One that fits. One that's safe." Her mouth opened, but no words came. "And I'd like to introduce you to someone who runs a foundation," he added. "They help with therapy and education for kids like Lucas. You don't have to accept anything. Just meet them. If it doesn't feel right, we stop." She blinked fast, her throat tight. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You don't even know us." He looked at her deeply. "Because when I was young, someone helped me when they didn't have to," he said, "and I promised myself that if I ever had the chance, I'd pass it on." She nodded slowly. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay?" He smiled. "Okay," she said again, wiping her cheek. That afternoon, Liana sat in the clinic where Lucas received limited therapy twice a month. They were waiting for their turn when a woman walked in, holding a sleek folder and a warm smile. She introduced herself as Maren from the Lotus Foundation, a group that helped families like theirs. Keanu had set it all up. Liana listened carefully, her fingers tight on the armrest. Maren spoke about resources, therapy sessions, better wheelchairs, housing options, transportation grants, all without judgment. "You're doing amazing already," Maren said. "We just want to help you keep going." As Liana held back tears, Lucas held her hand and whispered, "Does this mean I can get a new chair?" She nodded. He grinned. "Can it be red?" "We'll make sure it's red," Maren smiled. That night, Liana wrote something in a journal she rarely opened. "Dear God, I don't know if you still listen. I've been tired. I've been angry. I've felt invisible. But today, something changed. A man who could have driven past me stopped. He saw me. He helped, not because he had to, but because he cared. Maybe the world's not so cruel after all. Maybe there are angels, and maybe they wear sunglasses and ride in black SUVs. Thank you." The red chair. Morning air had a new kind of warmth in it. Not just the sunlight, but something softer, something unseen. For the first time in months, Liana felt like her steps had purpose. Like the world wasn't completely against her. Like someone, somewhere, had finally whispered, "You matter." A week had passed since that quiet conversation on the hospital bench. Since Keanu Reeves, yes. The Keanu Reeves had offered help without flashing lights, without expectations. True help, human help. Now, Liana stood outside her apartment building, holding Lucas's tiny hand. She looked down at him. His old wheelchair squeaked with every inch, the brakes barely holding on. But his eyes were filled with hope. "Do you think it's really coming today, Mama?" he asked, looking up at her with a mixture of excitement and doubt. "I think so," she said, brushing hair from his forehead. "They said by 10. And Keanu doesn't lie." Lucas grinned. "You always say that." "How do you know?" She smiled. "Because sometimes the people who talk the least mean what they say the most." At 9:56 a.m., a van pulled into the lot. It was white and plain, with no logos. Two kind-looking men stepped out. One wore a blue polo, the other carried a small tablet. "Nurse Rivera?" one of them asked. "Yes," Liana said, a bit breathless. "We've got something for a little superhero named Lucas." Lucas squealed with joy. They opened the van doors, and there it was, a sleek, bright red wheelchair, fitted with soft cushions, adjustable support, custom wheels, and a tray that could flip open or tuck away. It looked like something from the future, but it wasn't just about looks. This chair fit him. As they gently lifted Lucas from the old chair into the new one, he couldn't stop giggling. "It's so fast," he shouted, testing the wheels, "and it doesn't make the funny sound." The men smiled. Liana covered her mouth. Tears spilled over before she could stop them. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much. You can thank the man who called us," the worker said. "He said to make it the best one we had." She nodded slowly. "I will." Later that afternoon, she sent a photo to the number Keanu had used to text her the foundation contact. It was a photo of Lucas, wearing sunglasses too big for his face, sitting proudly in his red chair. Beneath it, she wrote, "He says thank you, and he's calling it the rocket. We don't have words, but thank you." A minute later, 3 simple words came back. He earned it. The next day, Liana was scheduled for another long shift, but something strange happened when she arrived at the hospital. Her supervisor, Ms. Castillo, a stern woman rarely seen smiling, approached her with a puzzled look. "Liana, can I see you in my office?" Liana felt her stomach twist. She nodded, followed quietly, and sat in the tiny room. "I don't know how to say this," Ms. Castillo began, frowning slightly. "We received a letter and a donation." "Donation?" Liana asked. "Yes," she replied. "A private foundation donated a large sum specifically to fund support for our nursing staff. It's enough to reinstate shuttle passes, provide meals during long shifts, and give bonuses to the night staff." Liana blinked. That's incredible." Ms. Castillo leaned forward. "But there's more. The donation came with one request, that we review your hours and consider adjusting your schedule so you can have more evenings with your son." Liana's hand flew to her mouth. "You're one of the best nurses we have," the woman said, her voice softening. "You give everything. I think it's time someone gave something back." "Was it Keanu?" she asked. Ms. Castillo tilted her head. "The letter didn't say. Just said the donor believes nurses are the backbone of humanity, and that some angels walk among us." Liana nodded, barely able to speak. That night, as she wheeled Lucas to the nearby park, everything felt different. The wind seemed softer, the sky more open. She sat on the bench watching her son race along the smooth path in his new chair, laughing as he spun in circles and shouted, "Watch me, Mama." She smiled, but then something made her pause. A man sat on the other end of the park, sunglasses on, hoodie up, calm, still. It was Keanu. He wasn't filming. He wasn't taking selfies. He just watched Lucas with a soft smile. He didn't wave, didn't interrupt. He just was there. Liana stood slowly and walked over. "You didn't have to come," she said. "I wanted to see the rocket in action," he replied, nodding toward Lucas. "You did this," she said. He shook his head gently. "No, you did. You show up every day. You carry the weight. I just helped lift a corner." She sat beside him. She said after a long pause, "I used to pray that someone would save us. Not in a magical way, just someone to notice. I stopped praying eventually. Thought maybe no one ever would. I've stopped praying before too," he said quietly. "But sometimes the answer comes after we've given up." They sat in silence, watching Lucas zoom past again, giggling. "So what happens now?" She asked softly. "Whatever you want." He said, "The path is yours. I'll walk beside it if you let me." She looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Then maybe, just maybe, I'll start hoping again." He smiled, and for the first time in a long while, the evening didn't feel heavy, that it felt like the beginning of something honest, something kind. And somewhere deep in her tired heart, a little light turned back on. The letter under the door. Days that followed felt like a dream slowly unfolding into reality. Not the kind of dream where everything is perfect, but the kind where each sunrise brings a little more strength, a little more color to the sky. For Liana, life had always been about endurance. Each day survived was a victory, but now something had shifted. Hope was no longer a distant star, it was walking beside her. Lucas was the first to change. The new wheelchair had given him wings. Every day after school, he raced up and down the courtyard outside their apartment, waving at neighbors and pretending to be a race car driver, a superhero, even a pilot. And with every joyful shout, Liana's heart healed, just a little more. But change wasn't just in their home. The hospital began to feel different too. The new support program meant hot meals during night shifts. Liana no longer had to choose between hunger and saving a few dollars. She was also given alternate scheduling 3 night shifts. Today shifts, which meant she could finally attend Lucas's parent-teacher meetings. The other nurses noticed, too. "What's happening lately?" one of them whispered one morning. "Things feel better." Liana only smiled. She never mentioned Keanu. She didn't need to. This was a private kindness, sacred, like a secret song between two souls. But something unexpected arrived one Thursday evening. As she came home after work, her key ready in hand, she noticed something strange on the floor. An envelope had been slid under her door, plain white, no name on it. She opened it slowly, unsure what to expect. Inside was a letter, handwritten. "Dear Nurse Rivera, you don't know me, but someone told me about you. They told me how hard you work, how you care for others even when no one sees, how you love your son with a heart that never gives up. I wanted to thank you. My wife passed away last year in your hospital. I don't know if you were her nurse, but someone like you sat with her when I couldn't. Someone held her hand and whispered to her gently. Someone stayed after their shift just to make sure she wasn't alone. I can never repay that, but I can honor it. Enclosed is a small token. No expectations, just gratitude. You helped someone who couldn't say thank you, so I will say it for her. Thank you." A husband who remembers. Liana stood frozen, heart pounding. Tears welled in her eyes as she slowly reached into the envelope again. Inside was a check. Not a fortune. But enough. Enough to cover 3 months' rent. Enough to buy groceries without counting every cent. Enough to breathe. She sank onto the floor, letter pressed to her chest, sobbing quietly, not from pain this time, but from the overwhelming weight of kindness, the wave of grace that kept catching her just before she fell. Lucas rolled up beside her. "Mama, what's wrong?" She shook her head, pulling him into her arms. "Nothing, baby, nothing at all. Some people just care." Later that night, Liana stood by her window. The stars were clear above the city. Below, the streets buzzed with life. She picked up her phone and sent a message to Keanu. Someone else heard the story, left a gift. "I think your kindness is spreading." His reply came seconds later. "Kindness always echoes. It's louder than we think." Meanwhile, across the city, Keanu sat alone on a quiet rooftop. He had just wrapped filming for the day, but his mind wasn't on scripts or camera angles. He was reading something, a photo-dotted drawing. Actually, Lucas had made it. It showed a stick figure version of him with big sunglasses, riding in a red wheelchair, beside a man labeled Keanu, who was holding a sign that said "Thank you for the rocket." Keanu smiled. Beneath the drawing were 5 words that made his eyes water. "You made my mama smile." He folded the paper carefully and slid it into his jacket pocket. He had been thanked for many things in his life: movies, charity, autographs. But this mattered more. The next day, something unexpected happened again. The school called Liana and asked if she could come early to pick up Lucas. Her heart raced. "Is he okay?" "He's fine," the secretary said. But something happened. and we think you'll want to see." She arrived 20 minutes later, out of breath. As she stepped into the school lobby, she saw Lucas sitting in his red chair. Surrounded by students and teachers, everyone was clapping. Some were wiping away tears. "What's going on?" she asked. The principal stepped forward. "Lucas gave a speech today during show and tell. He talked about his mama, how she's his hero, how she works at a hospital and helps people. He said she wakes up when the stars are still out and comes home when the moon is tired, and that no matter how sleepy she is, she always smiles for him." Liana's hand covered her mouth. "He made everyone cry," the principal added. "We decided to nominate him for a citywide kindness award." Lucas looked up at her. "I told them you were my real superhero." Liana knelt and hugged him tight. "They want to interview you," the principal said softly, "for the local paper." Liana hesitated. "I'm not used to cameras," she said. "I don't want this to feel like a show." The principal smiled. "It doesn't have to. Just be yourself. Your story is already shining." That evening, she texted Keanu. "Again, they want to write about us." "What do I say?" He replied. "Tell them the truth. The world needs more truth, more people like you." "What if I'm not enough?" "You already are." She stared at the screen, holding her breath. Then she replied, "Then maybe I'll say yes." Keanu wrote back just one word, "Good." Somewhere deep in the quiet of night, two people in very different lives stared at the same stars, one from a small apartment window, the other from a rooftop above the Hollywood skyline. And, for the first time in a long time, they both felt exactly the same thing. Not fear, not loneliness, not sadness, but the simple, silent peace of being seen. The hospital room and the promise that while weeks later, a quiet breeze floated through the city, brushing against rooftops and hospital windows alike. The sky was a soft gray, the kind that made everything feel slower, gentler. Liana Rivera stood outside the same hospital where so much of her story had begun. Except today, she wasn't in scrubs. She wore a simple blue dress, one Lucas had picked out at the thrift store, with a big grin, and said, "You look like a star in this, mama." Her hair was brushed and tied neatly, and her hands shook just slightly as she held a folder with printed notes. Today, she had been asked to speak at a nurse appreciation event. Only a few people knew her full story, but word had spread. The woman who used to walk 6 miles after a night shift, the woman who had slept at a bus stop, only to be noticed by someone the whole world knew but who had chosen to act without spotlight. The auditorium was small, filled with fellow nurses, patients, staff, and a few quiet visitors from the Lotus Foundation. The principal from Lucas's school was there, even the hospital's director. And in the back row, wearing a dark hoodie and sunglasses, sat Keanu Reeves. He hadn't told her he was coming. He didn't need to. She felt it the moment she walked into the room. When it was her turn to speak, she stepped up to the podium and took a breath. "I used to think the world didn't see people like me," she began. "We walk fast, work late, carry weight no one notices. We are the tired ones on the bus, the quiet ones in the corners of hospitals, the ones whose names are barely remembered after our shifts." The room grew still, but I was wrong, she continued, because someone saw me, not for what I lacked but for what I carried. Someone reminded me that the people who give their all deserve someone to carry them for a moment. She paused, her voice steady now. "I don't want to talk about tragedy today. I want to talk about kindness, about how it shows up quietly, like a whisper in the dark, like a stranger pulling over on an empty road, like a red wheelchair with strong brakes, like hope that doesn't wear a suit, but wears sunglasses and says almost nothing at all." Soft laughter broke the silence. People smiled. Keanu remained still, but behind the lenses, his eyes were full. "I want to thank everyone who believes that kindness matters more than recognition," Liana said, "because you're the reason people like me keep going." When she stepped down, the applause wasn't loud. It was soft, respectful, honest, the kind of applause that said, "We heard you, and we'll remember." After the event, Liana stepped outside into the cool air. She didn't expect him to follow, but he did. "You were amazing," Keanu said quietly. She smiled. "Thank you for being there. Always," he said. They stood in silence for a moment. You know, she added, I think you saved me. He shook his head gently. No. You saved yourself. I just showed up. She looked at him. That's what saving someone looks like. Weeks passed. The article about Lucas and Liana came out in the local newspaper. It didn't use names, just called them the nurse and her son. The headline read, The kindness that started with a red chair, soon. More donations came in, not money, but toys, books, letters from other nurses who said, you gave me hope again. A mother from another hospital sent crayons for Lucas. A janitor wrote a note saying she had applied to nursing school after reading their story. Kindness echoed. Keanu, true to his word, remained behind the scenes. But one morning, Lucas asked him, Can I show you my favorite place? Keanu smiled. Of course. They rode together to the hospital courtyard. It wasn't fancy, just a few benches and trees, but Lucas pointed to a corner where butterflies always landed. This is my thinking spot, he said. Keanu sat beside him. What do you think about stories? Lucas said. What it means to be strong, and what kind of hero I want to be. Keanu looked at him. You're already one. Lucas turned to him, thoughtful. Will you promise me something? He asked. Anything, Keanu said. Never stop helping people who are invisible, like Mama was. Make them feel seen. Keanu looked away for a moment, blinking hard. Then he nodded. Double quotes, I promise. Months passed. Liana's schedule allowed her to go back to school part-time. She wanted to study pediatric care. Her goal was to open a small community clinic one day for mothers like her, for sons like Lucas. Lucas grew stronger too. The therapy sessions, new chair, and love gave him confidence. He joined a local art club. He won a drawing contest, his winning piece. A nurse with a cape standing in front of a hospital, holding a boy in a red chair. Beneath it, he had written, She saves people. She saved me. On a quiet Sunday, Keanu invited them both to a private garden behind a small cafe. It was peaceful, green, and full of sunlight. There was no fanfare. Just three people, a few sandwiches, and laughter. You know, Liana said, sipping her tea. I used to dream of things like this. Not fame, not money, just peace. This is the best kind of success, Keanu said. When peace becomes possible. Lucas looked up. So, are we family now? Keanu smiled. I think we already are. And for the first time in a long journey through exhaustion, sorrow, hospital nights, broken chairs, and quiet prayers, the three of them sat together in a moment so simple, so quiet, so filled with light, that it felt like the ending of a movie. But it wasn't the end. It was a beginning. Because real stories don't end when the screen fades. They live on in every act of kindness, in every unseen hero. And in every red wheelchair, racing toward hope.